Tonight's the night. It's gonna be all right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Good to be with you. Another edition of the morning briefing here. Caffeine TV, nofilter.net. Believe all of our other platforms. Happy to have you along for the ride. That man over there, that is Mike Lubie Lubitz. I'm Jeff DeForest, and it's all on the line tonight, Lubie. I'll be going to Madison Square Garden in New York City. I still remember my early trips to Madison Square Garden. I was going to the old garden, actually, Lubie, many, many years ago. The one on 8th Avenue between 49th and 50th. Used to pay like $2.50 to get a lower ball ticket to see the New York Rangers or the New York Knicks. And I happened to be there the night at Gump Worsley. And for some reason, I was zeroed in on this. I decided as I was in the stands, let me see what the goalie does while the action is on the other end of the ice. So I'm looking at Gump Worsley, who was the goaltender for the New York Rangers at the time. Of course, had a brilliant career with Montreal and other teams as well. Gump Worsley, little stocky guy, looked like a fire hydrant in there. Looks nothing like the goaltenders of today, where they're humongous and they block the entire net, and you're wondering, how does anybody ever score in this fucking game? So the Gump, I'm watching him while the action is at the other end of the ice, and all of a sudden, he just caves in and goes down. 6, 7, 8. And it turned out, we didn't notice, some jackass had thrown an egg from the upper deck at the old garden and happened to nail Gump Worsley in the head. And I don't know that he was ever the same after that. He was kind of seeing things like your man, Sergei Bobrovsky, does at times, where you're wondering if he's disoriented. Can this man stand up? What happened? Is he dyslexic? Does he have vertigo? Not a good quality for a goaltender. But anyway, a lot will be on the line tonight as the New York Rangers are hosting the Florida Panthers in what you would have to say is an absolutely pivotal Game 5 in this Eastern Conference Final Series. We'll see what happens there. Now, if you're betting the game, Bet Online, your number one source for the NBA and the NHL playoffs this season. Every stat, every matchup, even live odds while the games are being played. What's the difference if Edmonton's down 2-0? Go ahead and send it in. That would be the time to capitalize. And, of course, they came away with a 5-2 win last night, so you enriched yourself very considerably if you were on Bet Online at that point. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack, poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. I think I hear my wife, the Mustang, just pounding away on the slots all night long. Head to the website today to get in on all the action. Don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, that would be all caps, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's a nice little deal there. You get an extra 50% in juice. Bet Online. The game starts here. All right, Lubie, we've all become hockey experts in a short period of time. It happens, you would say it happens every spring. It's like the baseball movie of the same name, where people that have never discussed a single second of hockey the entire season, all of a sudden are now experts. And we've become that. What's weird is, the movie that won the Oscar a couple of years ago for Best Picture, I never really understood what the fuck was going on in that movie. Everywhere, everything, everywhere, all at once. Remember that movie? It's kind of like trying to justify that Citizen Kane is one of the classic movies of all time. I would almost rather watch a Pauly Shore movie than Citizen Kane if I was trying to figure out what is the best movie ever made in history. But that was always the classic, the standard by which all others had to be judged. I don't know. Did you get this movie? Did you watch it? I've watched segments of it. I never really got into getting into the whole thing. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Did you get that, or was it just some mad scramble? Looked like it was put together by Fellini while he was on acid. Really incomprehensible, that movie. And that's the way hockey is for a lot of people, Louis. As you're watching what appears to be just a mad scramble, back and forth. The guy gets the puck over the blue line. Next thing you know, it's stolen. They're coming back the other way, but it's coming back the other way. Then it's in the corner. Then it's here. Then it's there. Then it's in the stands. Nobody knows what the fuck is going on, but all of a sudden, everybody is an expert on this, and we can boil this down. We can break it down to a couple of simple things, this series between the Rangers and the Panthers. It appears that the Florida Panthers have been badly outplaying, almost lopsided proportion, the amount of good play that's being exhibited by the Florida Panthers vis-a-vis the New York Rangers. It seems like they're being outplayed badly in the series, and yet it stands at 2-2 after 3 straight overtime games. A razor-thin edge here, but one of the key factors, and it's interesting, has been your favorite hockey player, Alexander Barkov. We couldn't figure out what the hell was going on with this guy. And it's interesting how a franchise can sometimes get stuck in their whole idea that, well, we drafted these guys, and they've come up together, And now they're maturing, and we're going to sprinkle in a couple of veterans, and this young core is really going to bring us over the top. What did that do for the Florida Panthers when they had Jonathan Huberdeau, who was an excellent player, but unfortunately, is this possibly one of the worst labels that you can have, especially in a sport that is as tough as hockey, a sport that's as tough as hockey, to be a finesse player? I know football players, they get their hair rising on their back when you say, hey, you know what? You're pretty good for a finesse player. Next thing you know, boom, the guy's ready to punch you right in the mouth. But Huberdeau, a good player, but wasn't necessarily going to get the Panthers to the so-called promised land. Aaron Ekblad, always injured, and Alexander Barkov, Sasha. Good player, but we're thinking, when is this guy really going to do something of any great significance? And then all of a sudden, he's become the key in this whole series between the Panthers and the Rangers, as you're looking at the Rangers, and they're all over them in the New York tabloids today. Zibanejad, Panarin, and Chris Kreider. Chris Kreider, who had that hat trick in the third period in the clinching game of the previous series for the New York Rangers when they finally got out of the Carolina series. None of these guys have done shit so far in the series, and that's going head-to-head with the Barkov line, which has excelled. But Barkov, of course, was awarded, what is it? Is it the Conn Smythe, the Vezina? Which trophy is it that they give the guy who is the best defensive forward in the game? Whatever that trophy is, Barkov won it this year, and it's not the first time. And it seems to be a well-deserved honor. Is it that simple, Lubie, that we're breaking down this series, that it's the Barkov line completely shutting down and stymieing the number one line for the New York Rangers? I mean, these guys were making sweeter music during the regular season. I mean, you talk about a trio making music. They were doing better than Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And I'm not talking about Sidney Crosby. I don't know if Sidney could sing. But that seems to be the essence. And the fact that the Panthers are having this much success against the top line of the Rangers and shutting them down like that has only emphasized how Shesterkin is the one thing keeping the Rangers in this series so far. So we'll see what happens. What is your bold prediction, Mike Lubie Lubitz? I'm thinking the road team has prevailed in the majority of games so far in the postseason. It's sort of lopsided in that regard. I think it's over 60%. The road team has won the game so far contested in all series in the Stanley Cup chase. What do you think? Did the Panthers come away 3-2 and win this thing in 6, as you predicted? Oh, no, you said 7.
I said 7 originally, yeah.
Did they win this in 6? Did they win this in 6 by winning tonight, the Florida Panthers?
It's so weird. Like, I said the Panthers in 7, but, like, it feels... and maybe it's being hopeful, but it feels like maybe the tide turned and being able to get an overtime victory after losing the prior 2 games in overtime, that maybe they can go back to New York. And again, they play well on the road. So maybe they can go back to New York, take tonight, and then have everything in their favor. It's just the way this team is. I don't feel like it'll be that easy. Like, I feel like they're going to make it difficult and take it to a 7 games. The fact that they've literally controlled this entire series and we're not at a 2-2 leads me to believe that they're not going to win in 6. Like, it's just this team tends. I don't know if they play with their food because they played aggressive and they played well, but they don't put. It feels like they don't put the good teams away. Like, I know they did with the Lightning, they did, but again, the Bruins, they let them get a game that it felt like they didn't. There's no way they should have gotten, and I think that's gonna. And the Rangers are good. The Rangers are just as good as they are. These teams are like a hair difference. Like, it feels like the Rangers will win tonight. The Garden's gonna be nuts and. The papers are giving them shit, and that first line's been. It's not that they've been bad. The Panthers' first line's been great, and at some point they're going to break through. You would think, and I could see tonight being that night.
Isn't that great, though? I mean, it's like us becoming food critics.
Doing a whole thing.
I've watched enough hockey to understand what the hell is going on out there, but at the same time, I can't say that I was zeroed in on the particular problems that might exist between the Rangers and the Panthers when they get together. The other series now is 2-2. Edmonton down 2-0 last night. Wow. That would have been the time, to jump on the Edmonton Oilers. And once again, we're living vicariously through the wager made by Portnoy, who of Barstool Sports, of course. And he's got $150,000 to win $1 million on the Edmonton Oilers to win the Stanley Cup. Now, we don't hear too much. Is this a Money Mayweather thing? We don't hear too much about the losing bets that are made by David Portnoy, but this is certainly one that has my attention because now, do you root for the guy or against him, whether you like him or not? Would you like to see anybody make a score against the book to the tune of $1 million? Wouldn't that be sweet? Roll up to a betting window and have somebody say, "Hey Mo, call the money room. We need $1 million." Just once in your life? Once in your life. It's happened to me once where I had a winning ticket for a combination at the horse track, and I went to the window to cash, and they actually had to, hey, Lou, we need money. Send to the money room. That was only 11 times. But imagine picking up $1 million. How do you get that? You just have them wire it into your bank account? I don't know how you collect that. But I would want to come away from the window with cash. But of course, with my luck, there'd be a guy standing there with a baseball bat as soon as I walked outside to my car. And that would be the end of that. But Edmonton comes back now 2-2 with the Dallas Stars. And so both series are where we proclaimed they would be, 2-2 after 4 games. And that continues. The Baskets, again tonight, Minnesota will try to defend its home court. And then they'll be doing it for the first time if they beat the Mavericks tonight. They managed to win that game in Dallas and keep the series alive. Is there any chance that the Minnesota Timberwolves make history? I know it's hard to see right now. And become the first team ever, Lubie, in NBA history. It still amazes me that this has never happened. It almost happened last year. We've been talking about that with the Boston Celtics, down 0-3 to the Miami Heat, come back, win 3 in a row, and then, excuse me, I'm choking on something, and then choke away that Game 7. Now, they are primed. I have never seen a path of less resistance than the Celtics have encountered on their way to the NBA Finals. For the Dallas Mavericks, who I think will give the Celtics a very hard time. In fact, I don't know that either matchup is favorable for the Boston Celtics because we really haven't seen the Celtics tested, even though they've been vulnerable. They've only lost 2 games so far, 12-2 in the postseason, but that's against teams that really, I mean, they may as well have been playing the Indiana Fever in any of those 3 series, as it didn't seem like it was that much of a challenge with key players out. And in each series, you had at least a couple of games where the top player on the other team was incognito, was out, was just out of the picture there. OOP, as they say in greyhound racing, out of picture. But I think either of those teams out of the West, and this has been the theory all year long, that the West was vastly superior to the East. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves because the series hasn't been decided yet, but would you give the Celtics a shot? And do they beat either of those 2 teams that are coming out of the West, possibly?
I mean, I think they can be both teams, not because they've been so scared, but to me, both those teams are vulnerable. The T-Wolves show their youth, even though I think they're a superior team than the Celtics. And the Mavs, after Kyrie and Luka, I feel like there's a major drop-off. And on top of that, Luka is supposedly dealing with a major injury, so who knows how that gets him.
He always looks like he's in pain, doesn't he?
He just well, he's not the most athletic guy, but
yeah,
he also supposedly ailing. So maybe that eventually gets to him. So I would take both the West teams over the Celtics, but it doesn't mean the Celtics can't beat them. I think the T-Wolves win tonight. I don't see them winning the series. I feel like they can win tonight, stretch it to 6 games, and then the Mavs will close the door in Game 6.
Didn't the original hiring of Tyronn Lue as a head coach in the NBA seem like a concession to LeBron James?
Yes, 100%.
$14 million a year. He just got like a 20-year extension to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Clippers, even though the Clippers routinely flounder and end up now they had injuries. Kawhi Leonard wasn't playing much, and they had other problems this year, getting knocked out again in an early round of the playoffs. But, man, is this man stealing money, Tyronn Lue? Is he really the second coming of Red Auerbach? Tyronn Lue, $14 million a year for the next 5 years. This Steve Ballmer's out of his fucking mind, isn't he? And then why is J.J. Redick getting such serious consideration? Is he actually going to be the next coach
I don't know.
of the LA Lakers? Sort of interesting because we're always screaming, hey, how about some new blood? Who wants to see Mike D'Antoni again behind the bench? It's always the same. It happens in the NFL, all sports. They just keep recycling the same deadbeats as head coaches, and all the fans are screaming, hey, how about somebody new? When is somebody new going to get in there? And what's weird is when somebody completely new comes in off the streets like J.J. Redick, who's never coached before at any level, is getting consideration to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Holy George Mikan. Well, what the hell are we talking about? Why is he getting such serious consideration? Because of his in-depth analysis on basketball? I mean, he seems like an interesting guy and certainly is opinionated, but as I recall, I don't know. He would have to have somebody like Ronnie Rothstein come out of retirement and help coach the defense, wouldn't he? J.J. Redick was known as one of the least, the least effective defensive players maybe in the history of the NBA. I think Ernie DiGregorio was a better defensive player than J.J. Redick. And I do remember, and I've mentioned this a few times, the GM of the Miami Heat at the time, when I asked about J.J. Redick coming out of Duke, in the NBA draft that particular year, they had a guy named Randy Fund, who used to be the right-hand man for Pat Riley. And that was with a P-F-U-N-D, right? Pafund, but it was fun. And he was a very interesting guy. And I asked him, I said, what about J.J. Redick? And he just looked at me almost dumbfoundedly and said, who's he going to guard? Which he did have a successful NBA career. He was a very useful component of a lot of teams, especially when he became that mercenary guy that was going to be 1 year with the contending team, shoot a bunch of threes, and help them get over the top. So his understanding of the game, you would think is very good, and he's been playing at a high level, so he should know what's going on. He's more of a recent player than some of the guys that come back and end up coaching. So, but why do you think he's getting such serious consideration? Is there really nobody else in the mix? Some guy that's been toiling in like Sioux City or whatever that has been an assistant? Is Kenny Atkinson, who was so highly regarded when he was with the Nets, can't sniff a head coaching job? What do you think? Does he end up being the coach of the LA Lakers? It certainly sounds like that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's what's weird to me is I get it. They did it with Kerr, where they brought him out of the booth. Then he became a GM that failed. He went back to the booth. Then he became a head coach and is now one, I guess, considered the best coaches in the league. But I don't know where this came. Like, I know he was doing the podcast and did that for a while, and a lot of players get involved with that. And supposedly he has good rapport with the players. And I guess now he's the lead analyst for ESPN. But all people have done is complain about him. He's not good at the job. And I don't get the connect. So guys don't have to coach at all. Like, you have all these guys. Caron Butler just coached for 4 years with the Heat, just re-up to be an assistant. You have all these guys that are lifer assistants. Like, why is a dude that's calling games he's not that far removed from playing? Like, he has no coaching experience. Like, I don't understand where this became. Like,
never even coached a high school team.
No, he's never coached at all. Like, I don't understand the connection. Like Tyronn Lue was the same thing. Tyronn Lue, I guess, was an assistant for a while when LeBron had a connection to him. Like, they've tried this with different guys. I don't know. To me, you should have to fucking coach a little. Like,
you would think, man. At least sit on the bench with somebody. Sit behind Rick Carlisle and go ahead, Rick, put him in. Anything to get some experience. It's absolutely bizarre. By the way, I don't know. I sort of enjoyed Redick's commentary when he was coming up to the position of being the number one guy. I don't know that he's doing such a stimulating job now with Doris Burke. And replacing Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson with J.J. Redick and Doris Burke would be like replacing John Lennon and Paul McCartney with Milli Vanilli to front for the Beatles. I mean, wouldn't it? Very, very unimpactful. The only reaction that anybody is rendering to this is, boy, these guys suck compared to the other guys. I don't know what ESPN was thinking. Were they just complaining too much about the NBA? Or were they spitting on the parade of the NBA being seen as nothing but brilliance and greatness, as they were complaining all the time about the officials and the way the game is being administered? I guess that would be something that wouldn't necessarily endear them to the network executives. A couple of other things real quickly here. Naomi Osaka. I used to see Naomi Osaka, and this was interesting because I was playing a bunch of tennis at a local park here in Pompano Beach, Florida. And a buddy of mine and I, we went out there every day around the same time. And every day around the same time, we would see this 14-year-old girl who was knocking the shit out of the ball. And I remember asking one of the coaches there, I said, who's that kid? And the answer was Naomi Osaka, who at the time, and they even said, and she's ranked like number 232 in the world right now as a 14-year-old. We did not know that she was going to achieve the kind of heights eventually, because you see a lot of people at local parks. You could go pretty much anywhere around the world and see some young phenom just hitting the crap out of a tennis ball, literally like blowing the fuzz right off the top of the ball. And you're wondering, how is that person not a top-notch competitor? So Osaka ascends to the number one position in women's tennis. And had, 4 Grand Slam events that she had won, and looked like she was going to be a dominant force forever. And then she had this mental breakdown, which we certainly respect. It seemed kind of odd watching her in interviews, and she would just start sobbing. And she took a break from tennis. She came back. She had a child, got married. Seems to be in a decent place from a mental standpoint. What a battle last night. I guess this took place in the afternoon over at the French Open in Paris. And she's got Iga Swiatek by the jugular. She's up 5-2. has a couple of, I think she had at least one match point. She ends up serving for the match at 5-3, loses that game, and in one of the bigger choke jobs that I've seen in a long, long time, ends up losing the match to the number one player in the world. I had an excellent chance to knock her out in the second round of the French. And Swiatek owns the clay, owns the red clay. This woman is almost impossible to beat, almost Nadal-esque. So that would have been a monumental upset. But you see it so often, Lubie, especially in these individual sports. But you see it so many times. We saw it in the NBA, where the upstart, you have to put the champion away. You have to put the better team, the better player away. And if you miss that opportunity, how many times do you see it where there's just a complete meltdown at the moment of truth? And that happened to Osaka in a very inspiring match, I would imagine, for her, but ended up in the most deflating fashion as she blows what seemed to be an insurmountable lead and ends up losing that match. So Swiatek remains in the tournament with an excellent chance to win it all. All those chalk players, though, had to be gagging on their milk of magnesia, as they were thinking, oh, my God, she's going to get knocked out in the second round. I had her beating Sabalenka in the finals. But really good stuff coming from the French Open yesterday, especially on the women's side. All right, that's going to do it for us. A lot of fun being with you. If you're Jorge Lopez today, what do? This was a Mets reliever. He gives up a home run to Shohei Ohtani, who had money on the fact that he was going to hit a home run in that game. And I think his interpreter is still betting from jail out of Ohtani's account. And so he ends up getting ejected from the game. He throws his glove into the stands. He hasn't been terrible. Statistically, he doesn't look bad, but his last two outings, he's been lit up like a Christmas tree. And they send him down to the minors right after that. Not the best of days for the New York Mets, who have now lost 8 out of 9 after a promising start. What happened to all of Steve Cohen's money? That is, it's like they put it into a Bunsen burner and incinerator, and just turning all of that capital into ash. We have to run. Thanks so much for being with us. Always a pleasure. For Mike Lubie-Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Great being with you here on today's edition of the Morning Briefing. We'll do it again tomorrow. Have a Degenerate Friday edition. By the way, our man Troy West hit yesterday on that Rangers game.
Nice.
So our Daily Degenerate, I think, is going to evolve into a very meaningful and profitable segment for you guys. So keep an eye out for that. And we will see you tomorrow, the next edition of the Morning Briefing.